Howdy, friends. I'm speaking to you today in order to stand up for some folks who have been unduly criticized of late. I'm talking about those hard-working policymakers at central banks around the world. Now, as you know, we've been living through what they call an inflationary episode. Kind of like me after I learned you could get them McDonald's French fries delivered straight to your door. Well, as we all know, our inflationary episode was a function of supply chain issues and particularly a result of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In fact, here's a quote from the European Central Bank's blog posted earlier this year. I memorized it. I'm not reading it. The war triggered a massive shock to the global economy, especially to energy and food markets, squeezing supply and pushing up prices to unprecedented levels. Now, in response to this crisis, what did they do? Central bankers raised interest rates. European Central Bank pushed rates to a record high and the Fed to the highest level in 22 years. Now, their goal, of course, was to reduce demand so that this might reduce prices. If people can't afford to buy stuff, then the price of stuff falls. Simple. But our central bankers have come under fire from some nervous Nellies and windy whiners out there. These nincompoops have suggested that because the problem was actually caused by a fall in supply, lowering demand really doesn't address it. Oh, come on now. Do you really think that those smart people with all them fancy degrees would be making a mistake? What they're doing is they're engaging in higher order thinking, all right? They're coming up with outside-the-box solutions. Now, don't beat yourself up too much because you couldn't see it. It's complicated. But in order to help you figure it all out, I done come up with an analogy and one drawn from real life. See, me and the missus, we got some chickens out here on the ranch, and we feed them corn. Now, sometimes we forget to resupply the feed corn so that it runs short. Well, that's just like Russia invading Ukraine. That left us short of grain and fuel, which caused inflation. Now, we don't get inflation per se out here on the ranch, but what we do get is chickens fighting each other for the remaining feed corn. And that's the same thing. When the supply falls, the cost of accessing the market goes up. Now, you're probably thinking that our typical solution is just to go out and buy some more feed corn. Well, it used to be until we got smart. What we do now is we corral all the chickens in the hen house and we put little weights on their legs. That way it's harder for them to move. Of course, it affects them all differently. Some of the older, weaker chickens can hardly make it out of the coop anymore. And as for others, they don't even seem to notice it. But man, does it cut down on the barnyard fights. And we do it just like the central bankers do, scientifically. We add a little bit of weight at a time. If what we put on them yesterday wasn't enough, we add a bit more, and a bit more, and a bit more, and so on. Eventually, we find the right combination that cuts out the fights entirely. No more inflation. Now, mind you, not all the chickens survive, but there's no more fights. Well, that's what them geniuses at the world central banks are doing. They're getting rid of the inflation by putting little weights on everyone. Not too much, of course, just enough to force a sufficient number of people to no longer be able to access the markets in question. It's like the chickens that are lying dead in our hen house. Now, this isn't causing the actual supplies of oil and foodstuffs to go back up, but what it does mean is that the Consumer Price Index, a poorly defined but widely publicized policy target, possibly stops accelerating. And besides, what else could we have done? Allowed the prices to go up so that it encouraged entrepreneurs to expand supplies in relevant markets? Undertake policies that would have incentivized shifts towards more sustainable energy sources? Subsidize the incomes of those most vulnerable in our population? Try to end the conflict in the Ukraine? Now you're being dumb again. Higher order thinking. That's the place to be. I hope you can see that now. So in conclusion and in defense of our hard-working policymakers, Jerome Powell, God bless you. Christine Lagarde, merci bien. I know some French. C'est tout. Merci pour la viewing de la vidéo. Au revoir, mes amis.